So, left-handed ableism is what I named the stream, so I guess I should like talk about it or something. We ourselves were left are it's a weird thing. I guess, huh. So it's kind of complicated, but like people who are left-handed aren't always treated really well. Oftentimes they're like things in how things are built and designed that favor right-handedness that can make being left-handed hard, and it requires, I guess, a certain sort of masking because things aren't built for you in the same way that like a lot of places aren't built for people with varying disabilities, either like through the way they're designed architecturally, like how some places aren't wheelchair accessible, and if like a government building, for example, isn't wheelchair accessible, it's actively keeping, or I guess in a way passively disregarding that there are people who would need access to a certain building without uh that there are people who need access to that certain building, and like they would need strenuous accommodations to do so. Uh, a lot of systematic oppression is so ingrained in like the way things work that it just seems like the natural way because people haven't seen any other ways done, and they see that thing as normal. Neurological differences can be seen that way, like eye contact. It's seen as rude to not make eye contact. um, if someone extends their right hand towards you because they're right hand dominant, to try to get you to shake their hand, they're technically assuming that you're right-handed because that way engage your right hand, because if you're left hand dominant, you can't shake your dominant hand with their dominant hand that way. They'd have to extend with their left. Um, and that would be more like a social faux pas. But like the way people write and stuff is affected, and that's how it affected us. And that's what our handedness force changed was kind of about, because uh like ringed binders are made for right-handed people. When we wrote on them with our left hand, we would constantly hurt our hand, because of the rings would be like we'd have to put our hand resting on them. um I think for the first few months that we started writing right-handedly, we had big welts on our fingers from pressing too hard, because we had to adjust to like how to write with the right hand because we were still curling our hand like a southpaw would. Um, there's a lot of effects. There's a lot of effects that being left-handed and being forced to essentially be right-handed does to you. And there's a YouTube video that was talking about left-handedness or handedness in video games and how it's been depicted. And it got us thinking about it. Especially because towards the end of the video, the essayist talked about how a lot of people might think it's trivial to like focus on handleness in gaming, and how much criticism he was putting in on game developers for, instead of animating like uh, a left hand or ambidextrous accommodating like actions for say reloading a weapon, as opposed to mirroring it. And if you know anything about like art and stuff, when you mirror an image, certain um, problems or uh, certain errors in the drawing are made apparent that wouldn't have been so if you flip it. And the same thing for video games. It's a shortcut, but it can have unintended consequences. And And there are some abled like critiques of handedness in games, like not having like not intuiting that some of your players might be left-handed and might want to have like a left-handed aim, because it's not all about like sights being on the in the middle of the screen. Sometimes it's about what side the gun is actually on. Will determine how you shoot, how you round corners. Apparently, it's a big thing in online competitive shooters. A lot of left-handed people complain that there's no accommodation for them. Um, and even stuff like video games will sounds trivial in terms of like, I guess, a wider conversation about like what's bad about society forcing people to be right-handed. Um, some people could even see it as something, of course, they didn't notice because it's like such a small thing. But I think it's a microcosm of like how difference is treated. And you'll see what I'm talking about soon because I did a bunch of research, really quick, about left-handedness, and it brought me to some interesting places. It reminded me of just how messed up people can be about the differences between people, even ones that are seemingly innocuous. Just like something like being multiple. Being left-handed was seen as in some in some historically as signs of like demon possession or just general lack of moral fiber. Like just imagining left-handed people as bad people. It is funny that the right and the left politically are what they are, and it's like, oh yes, I'm a leftist. Being left-handed is preferred, uh, which is funny. And now me saying it like that, it reminds me of the people who are like, they're like straight phobic, or make the joke of I have plenty of straight friends, and kind of like try to turn the script on like how people are kind of shitty about like race or gender or any sort of marginalized person's like oppression or your ability to navigate it. I guess in the sense of, oh, I have like a gay friend. I know what's homophobic, and this is not homophobic. Like using that as a justification. Um, when people, I guess, reclaim and reverse that, it's kind of poking at the idea to show how silly it is. But there is an argument to say that being a minority will make you not be super friendly towards the majority. And I can understand as a naturally left-handed person, I don't, and that's a weird thing. I don't even know if I'm allowed to call myself left-handed because I've been operating right-handedly for so long. But if I compared it to any other like thing that we are, like autistic, for example, before we thought that even if we were autistic, it didn't matter because we were high functioning, so we were effectively neurotypical because we could mask. But just like anything else, masking hurts. So like if I was forced to mask to the point that I can't operate how I would want to as a lefted person, it doesn't take away that like identity, but it feels weird and imposter syndrome to even like think about. I was like, well, I don't write with my left hand, so I couldn't possibly be left-handed. But did you know that people who are left-handed actually or people who are left side dominant have other ways in which that identity is expressed? Like apparently people who are left dominant also like prefer to chew on the left side of their mouth. We also do that. Oh, hey Larry, how are you? We need to go back to Doom style, just a gun in the middle pointing exactly where you were shooting. That would be. I think that there's a place for that, of course, and there's lots of Doom likes and stuff like that. But I think especially with AAA's like obsession with photorealism and like high fidelity graphics and sometimes even just the illusion of realism, that like a lot of the games that like see the most like press and see a lot of visibility are gonna continue having that problem. Though I know you're probably being a little bit facetious. My mom got conversion therapy for her left-handedness as a child. I was thinking about comparing it to conversion therapy. I wasn't sure if it was gonna be kind of fucked up or not to say it like that. Cause I'm saying here like I read a thing about a guy who, as a boy, had his hand tied behind his back in summer school so that he would be forced to write right-handed. And I've heard of people doing that to their kids, like as we were growing up. And that sounds like conversion therapy to me, or at the very least, I mean, okay, not in the sense of a physician doing it or like under the guise of like a medical intervention like a lot of conversion therapy for queerness is, but I mean in terms of like for example our realities or experiences of um being, for lack of a better term, like home brewed ABA therapy, which is supposed to help autistic people like navigate society in a more neurotypical way. Some people would say it's a treatment for autism, and those same people would probably also say the autism speaks are very good actually. They're not very good actually. ABA is considered to be torture now by a lot of people, especially survivors of it. And although we can't say that we've had like an institutionalized level of abuse, we definitely think that we have experiences that overlap with some of the things that are taught to autistic people in those situations that kind of achieve similar results. Stuff like punishing someone for stimming, for example. And so thinking of it like that, and especially considering I was just before being like, oh yeah, this is totally analogous to disability activism stuff and how neurodivergencies and just minority populations in general are treated. But it blows my mind that someone could go to fucking conversion therapy for being left-handed. It sounds absurd in a very bad way, or I guess it sounds absurd in a way it's like I still want to lean into the trivialness of why would someone care so much about which hand someone else writes on that they would be willing to spend upwards of thousands of dollars to fix, quote unquote, fix it. But I mean, control is a big part of it. It doesn't matter what the control is sometimes. Uh People want to see you do certain things. That's where a lot of homophobia and transphobia sometimes comes from, of people's families wanting a particular future or life for you. And of course, queer time is different and queer lives are different. Even the people who say that they're supportive or like aren't against trans people do tell people close to them that come out to them, oh, but are you sure you want to go through all that bigotry? Which is like pretty much one of the worst things you could tell a person or say to a person. You can say, I'm worried about you because the way the world is, but like if that's your first thing when someone comes out to you for about anything that's gonna make their life harder, that's not helping. Because hiding it doesn't make it go away. Good morning, and what's the word? New Year's? New Year's. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Void. I'm not being facetious. There is nothing stopping studios from putting a gun in the middle. TF2 and Doom Eternal do it, and a lot of people praise the feature. Oh, wait, really? Okay, I'm not. I'm surprised. Wow. I don't play a lot of first person shooters. There's a first person shooter I really want to play. It's not out yet. But I hadn't even noticed that Doom was like that. I don't know how else to describe it other than conversion, especially in how it was described to me. Hmm. I think that it's scary to come to the realization of just how fucked up the world is sometimes when you see injustices that you didn't notice and you see the severity of those injustices. So I don't think it's bad to call it that. Though I guess uh I am now experiencing what certain people did when they started hearing about, say, oh yeah, there's a trans genocide happening, and their first thought was, no, they can't possibly be doing that. They're not mass killing trans people, and it's like genocidal negligence is a thing, but that's a whole nother conversation. The point is, there are a lot of people who are allies to the queer community who pushed against that framework just because of the language used, because they felt like the severity of such a term, the severity of such a term did not match the reality of what's happening right now. And I guess in the same way, hearing conversion therapy for left-handedness is just like it's it requires a little bit of reframing. At least in our my mindset, like if you can be put in that sort of situation for being left-handed, then there is no end to the amounts of control that someone would try to exert over a person. Though of course I think that a big part of it also kind of has to do with like the rights of children, because children are seen as property, and a lot of people wouldn't see forcing a kid who is left-handed to be right-handed as abuse. And if, for instance, that happened to a kid, but that kid was never like spanked or anything, someone might say they had a really good childhood, independent of anything else. And I think that that's really interesting and really scary, because there's a lot of different types of abuse, and some of it you don't realize till much later, obviously, and then some of it you don't even think about the full severity of it because it's had such a profound yet invisible effect on your life that you can't by yourself retrace all the steps of how it changed the course of your life. That's honestly how looking up all this left-handedness shit has affected us, or at least me. It's a it's easier for us to force you to comply with how things are than makes changes to adapt you. Oh yes, exactly. It's it's incredibly that. Sometimes like abuse comes from convenience. If I can force you to be this way, then why even listen to you say that you're this other way? I mean, thinking about transness again, like for example, trans kids and like force detransition, like it's easier to even just not have it seems quote unquote easier to not have trans people exist in society than to accommodate us. Although ironically it actually is not more convenient. It like it costs money to like separate kids from their families in the same way that it costs money to put someone in conversion therapy, like sometimes upwards of thousands of dollars. And so it's actually kind of ridiculous and kind of shows the falsehood of the claim of, oh, like we're doing it to help this thing, or any sort of like, I guess, positive framing of that sort of abuse. Because if you're willing to like put so many resources into changing a person, if you think about like the cumulative effect of that, it would probably be cheaper, maybe not easier structurally, but definitely cheaper to just create accommodations. At least in our opinion. I mean, not just genocide via negligence, but laws like the ones in Texas. Oh yeah, for sure. I'm actually thinking to, and of course you couldn't have known this. There is some videos that we saw talking about uh how in conversations about trans genocide right now, someone responded with, "Well, if there's a trans genocide right now, then does that mean that the AIDS crisis was also a genocide?" And the answer was yes, and that was genocidal negligence. Uh, what's happening right now is not genocidal negligence. It is an escalation of a lot of genocidal elements again weaponized against trans people. They're only increasing as time goes on. Especially because changing that understanding will potentially remove something that specifically benefits the ones in charge. Oh yeah, I mean that's why there's like a system of privilege in a lot of things, because if you just had the damaging society with no beneficiaries or seeming beneficiaries of the way the system is, then you're gonna have a lot less people like rallying up to defend it. And if you have people who benefit from the way things are above like the rule, sorry, beneath the ruling class, usually in the middle between the people who are most affected and the people who are least affected, then you kind of insulate the power structure, because there are plenty of people who are going to see a lot of honor in defending the status quo, especially like police officers and stuff. Um, but also, quote unquote, normal people will see it as a threat to their way of life for things to change, even if intrinsically their lives will be better if those changes are made. Especially in the especially when we're talking about stuff like disability, because the funny thing is any able person can become disabled at any time, as we're seeing with COVID. But that's like a totally another thing altogether. But I think that having being reminded that the line is gray, and that um you could always fall out of favor with the dominant position in society is important, because uh equality and like treating others well, and how people should be treated, I think has a baseline of like trying to do the best for the people at the lowest rungs of society, because anyone can be there, instead of just gearing society to be, oh well, I should just prepare or assume that I'll be successful and be in the best position in society one day, because obviously society is sort of judged by the welfare of the people with the least amount of resources. No, it is absolutely cheaper to accommodate than remove. Mm, mm. I wonder how weird that's gonna be later, cause I just put the I allow one of the things you said to be posted in chat because of the conversation. But now I realize that the fucking chat bot is like fluff by permitted term, kill trans, and I'm like, Oh god. That's gonna suck if someone abuses that. But I can't exactly ban those two words next to each other if we're gonna talk at any length about the totally fucked up shit that's actually happening nowadays. Honor system. But yeah, they rather kill trans kids than change their base understanding of humanity and society. Yep. It sucks too, cause like, yeah, you could be able one day and then disabled the next, and you can use a "that'll happen to you" argument. Yeah, and I guess like that's a double-edged sword because it can make people even more fiercely in fear of like losing their already tenuous place in society, and that's actually how like the concept in the Western world about the value of homeless people is kind of structured, because even though I think most people agree that uh the lives of homeless people are should not be the way that they are, especially in a place like America. Um, that there should be like more kindness or more resources for people who are in that position. There isn't a lot of people willing to help in any like present day non-tokenistic way. Present time. Step on me, master. Thanks for following. Your life will be filled with happiness and sadness. That's a cool name. Happy New Year. I'm Fantasia Bite. Nice to meet you. Shit, what was I saying? Um, fuck. Fuck. I just got a just total party wipe of my brain cells. And so it's hard to convince trans and gay kids that most people won't have the possibility of directly benefiting from those accommodations. May the steppies be with you. Nice fucking Beetlejuicing right there. Wait, Beetlejuicing? Is that a new term for pissing yourself? Just Beetlejuiced all over myself. You can hardly believe it. Oh, the it'll happen to you argument how it's a double-edged sword. I think that's what I was talking about. Because the people talking about how like being trans or something is like a social contagion is like a really fucked up thing. And like we experienced that too when we first came out as trans. There were people not just in our family but people that we knew who assumed that our partner at the time had converted us to a trans. Essentially they thought that we had become so like um submissive as a boy that we were forced to be a girl. Which is a whole fetish. Which is a whole fetish, and it's funny that so many people are like, oh yes, people only go down these certain paths because of fetish related reasons, and this like uh was it like an Oedipus, not Oedipus complex, uh that was a Freudian slip, a uh, what's that thing when you like only care about yourself? A narcissist complex, that sort of thing. But now that I think about it, narcissism does categorize a lot of like alternative ways of being in a very like the rest of society looking at you sort of way. Like even being a furry, for example. Like, oh, you're a furry? That's so like radical and contrarian. And of course, there's like a lot of punk sensibilities in the furry community, but like considering the amount of people who are in the furry community who are just like, I just want to bark and be gay. Um, I think that there is enough of a sense of like just not giving a fuck about what's normal. as opposed to narcissistically thinking you're better than other people. Like growing up and hearing so many people categorize queer people as like really thespian-y and like really hoity-toity, um and really like elitist was like a total misrepresentation of like what we've experienced within the queer community. But it's the same thing with like any sort of like niche community, I think. This left-handedness shit got off the rails. Let's talk about left-handedness more. Beetlejuicing is like what Step on Me Master just did. Wait, now I need to look up Beetlejuicing. I need to be more internet literate. Beetlejuicing. Beetlejuicing, know your meme. Beetlejuicing is a commentating phenomenon observed in the social news site Reddit where a user replies to a post or comment whose username is contextually relevant to the topic of discussion at hand, especially when it occurs by coincidence and the commentator is unaware of the connection being made. Oh, okay. Cool. I love the internet. Okay, so I looked up these, or I have these up, not exactly in the order that I looked them up, but kind of like the thought processes I want to jump from. I'm not gonna read every word of everything here, or else we'll be here all day. Because there are literally some whatchamacallits here. Like, there's some studies here. There's like a neurological study that almost broke my brain because I'm dumb, not dumb, but I'm also not a neuroscientist, and it used a ton of jargon. But it was very interesting. Did you know that apparently being left-handed but being forced to be right-handed, it doesn't give you brain damage, but it does affect your brain, and it can add more processing power, or processing power, a higher processing strain on you, which I think is really interesting. At least that's how I interpreted it. But considering we're dyslexic and we didn't know we were dyslexic for a really long time, and then once we realized that we were dyslexic, we realized that we were putting a whole lot of extra power into not misspelling words that we would normally naturally misspell or see as misspelled. It was like, oh wow, I can reclaim my disability by like letting myself misspell things and not feeling so bad about it because the what's it called? The vigilance of always like trying to perform a neurotypicality is exhausting. And I guess that would probably be a thing for handedness too. Hello, crocodile. There's a crocodile in my room laying out on a crocodile. What handed are you? You're right-handed. Okay.
It's Flat Fuck Sunday.
It's Flat Fuck Sunday, the first Sunday of the year. Oh yeah, gays and trans people were shown to me as a slippery slope to bestiality and other fucked up taboos when I was young. Oh, so I got it wrong, lol. Oh yeah, that's like such a normal thing.
Everything's a fucked up slope to everything.
I mean, I think internet rabbit holes have taught me that anything can get you in anything, honestly. Um, but yeah, it is such a it's such a what are those things called? Logical fallacy. It's such a logical. Oh, I mean, I think that's literally the name of the fallacy, the slippery slope fallacy. And also, it's like false equivalencies. Like a guy being sexually or romantically interested in another guy is not even comparable to like being that way with like an animal. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. Um and I mean, in society we combat even like more seemingly overlapping ideas of how one thing leads to another, like video games and violence. Like gamers, I'm sure that most people here are gamers. Not that this is an anti non-gamer space. That's not usually a thing we have to say. It's like, oh yes, if you're not a gamer, it's okay for you to be here. But I mean, if you're not a gamer, is someone holding you at gunpoint? Have you been kidnapped? I'm not sure why you're here, but if you enjoy being here, that's fine. Um, it's I lost my train of thought again. Shit. Oh, video game violence. Like it is generally not taken for granted anymore, at least within gaming centered like communities, that playing violent games does not make you like uh an abuser, or does not make you more likely to be a mass shooter. Um though the assumption that it could, I think from a quote unquote like intuitive, what some people would call a common sense place, makes more sense than there's any link between uh being queer and things that are accepted as generally debaucherous, uh immoral behavior. God, I know a lot of these medical studies are going to be colored like subversive eugenics. I hope not. I hope it's not. How can we genetically get rid of left-handed people? Or unless you mean the trans thing again. People who get weird about spelling check. Oh yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, also we were raised by two people who had like multiple college degrees, and although they didn't, like, their main jobs weren't in teaching, they had worked in teaching at one point or another, and like definitely saw like higher education, a certain level of education, as a must for being like a worthwhile person. And I know that that might sound like ridiculous, but we definitely grew up thinking that our love was contingent on getting to a certain level of educationalness, because we saw the people who did not have college degrees in our family were loved less. uh so like there were a lot of factors that made us be like, oh yes, I can't ever misspell anything ever, or I'm dumb. Gays don't cause people to marry body pillows. I mean, if someone wants to marry a body pillow, I don't think that that's like the worst thing in the world. But also, that's a lot of money to marry a body pillow. I mean, if you get your own little tats bracket, then like it may be worth pursuing for some people. But I think the loneliness epidemic and hikikomorism and like I guess social isolation is more of the problem there than like just this really weird thing, because I feel like that's more of a symptom of a wider issue. Video games cause violence is definitely more of a fear mongering campaign than anything. Oh yeah, and people still do it. I mean, especially considering like the average politician is generally like 3 times the age of anyone in this chat. Televangelists using conservative talking heads to push a poorly created thought. Eugenics doesn't necessarily mean there's sense in it. It's just the act of attempting to remove from society. Oh yeah, it doesn't need to be like hella coordinated. It could just be a thing that is happening. It definitely happens as a result of other things that happen. Like nationalism. So even though you literally cannot remove left-handedness from the gene pool, eugenicists can certainly try, or even skew their studies to benefit that philosophy. Oh yeah, I guess everything is like steps in a direction, as opposed to just like a huge like, okay, we're doing this now, because incrementalism is can be incrementalism is a part of like neoliberalism, but incrementalism as a way of like wearing down or normalizing certain things can be an effective strategy. As we, oh gosh, this is such a, oh god, this is such a political stream. I mean, I already said neoliberalism, so you knew it was already there. But I was just thinking about how normally when people talk about incrementalism in lefty spaces, it's usually, yo, incrementalism won't get shit done. Yes, you shouldn't give up on voting and stuff like that, but that should be like, that should just be the baseline thing. If anything, that should be the minimum that you're doing in terms of like, I guess, collective action, right? But that trying to change the things from the inside and just get small changes uh is a way that you can be taken advantage of, because stall tactics can stop that, or make the small changes not stick, as we're seeing with like the rolling back of civil rights in this country. Oh, sorry, in America, but also other places. I don't know where everyone is who's watching this. But incrementalism has benefited the right, as especially seeing as the like Supreme Court type stuff in regards to uh the possibility of revoking marriage rights even for biracial couples, shows us working really slowly towards a goal and being very hard set into it can be very useful, and that's a different sort of incrementalism. Sometimes it shows up as an incrementalism in policy, sometimes it's incrementalism in efforts, but consistency is the important part. Would Drizzle marry me if I was a body pillow? I don't know. I think you'd have to ask her. Would you be a sentient body pillow? Also, would you be the talking image? Or would you be like a mouth that opened?
Oh, Docky.
And modern Western medicine is very much structured with eugenics as its core philosophy. As a core philosophy. Whoa, I haven't really thought of it that way. But I mean, like, generally speaking, like, I don't know, it makes me think of like the concept of designer babies and how like some of the things that were promised for like the future of medical technology does have a lot to do with controlling how bodies are, not changing how bodies are, but like guiding them into certain directions. And at first, like something like choosing your baby's eye color, I thought was just something really neat. Oh gosh, some people can do that now. It was like, wait, that leads to other sort of things of trying to like get a certain kind of kid with like say certain types of talents, or screening out certain traits. Kind of reminds me of My Hero Academia, and how there are people who literally breed to get babies with better quirks. The right is also heavily using ratchet effect because the Democratic Party is weak. Oh, the Democratic Party isn't weak? What do you mean? The Democratic Party is helping. The Democratic Party is like, I can change them. But the Republican Party is like, I can make us both worse. No brain, only pillow. I'm sure she'd sit on you. Bias against left-handed people. Of course, Wikipedia article, because it's our favorite website. Bias against left-handed people is a bias or design that is usually unfavorable against people who are left-handed. Handwriting is one of the biggest sources of disadvantage for left-handed people. other than for those forced to work with certain machinery. About 90% of the world's population is right-handed, and many common articles are designed for efficient use by right-handed people, and may be inconvenient, painful, or even dangerous for left-handed people to use. These may include school desks, kitchen implements, and tools ranging from simple scissors to hazardous machinery such as power saws. Beyond being inherently disadvantaged by a right-handed bias in the design of tools, left-handed people have been subjected to deliberate discrimination and discouragement in certain societies. They may have been considered unlucky or even malicious by the right-handed majority. Many languages still contain references to left-handedness to convey awkwardness, dishonesty, stupidity, oh, love that one, or other undesirable qualities. In many societies, left-handed people were historically, and in some cases still are, forced as children to use their right hands for tasks which they would naturally perform with the left, such as eating or writing.
Wow, that's really sinister.
You sound happy.
No, I'm making a pun. Because sinister refers to the left hand. It's your sinister hand.
What? Sinister refers to your left hand?
I believe
Gosh.
it's part of like the root of the word.
Sinister root. Malicious. Underhanded. I see.
Latin means left. Or Latin sinister means left. And dexter means right.
I see. The Latin word used in augury in the sense of unlucky, unfavorable omens, especially bird flights seen on the left hand, were regarded as pretending misfortune, and thus sinister acquired a sense of harmful, unfavorable, and adverse. This is from the Greek influence, reflecting the early Greek practice of facing north when observing omens. In genuine Roman auspices, the augurs faced south and left was favorable. Thus, sinister also retained a secondary sense in Latin of favorable, auspicious, fortunate, lucky. Wow! Yo, we can be sinister! Gosh. I like reclaiming things. Oh, fun thing I learned. Being raised by a general contractor, left-handed versions of power tools were not available on the West Coast for the longest time. Wait, on the West Coast specifically? That's interesting. But was freely available east of the Mississippi. I don't believe the West Coast is so ableist. Actually, I very much do. Favorable perceptions. Among Incas, left-handers were called, and are now called among the indigenous peoples of Andes. So shit, I thought it said trans. Left-handers were also called trans. Translation, Q. Equois, which was a positive value. Peoples of the Andes considered left-handers to possess special spiritual abilities, including magic and healing. Okay, so if you're if you're left-handed, you can be a red mage. The third Sapa Inca Luco Lupanqui was left-handed. His name, when translated from Quechua, means the glorified left-hander. In Tantra Buddhism, the left hand represents wisdom. Okay, so I'm making a prediction. Left-handedness being bad is a Western concept. In early Roman times, the left side retained a positive connotation as the augresses proceeded from the eastern side. The negative meaning was subsequently borrowed from Latin, from Greek, and ever since in all Romance languages. In Russian, levasha, lefty left-hander, became a common noun for skilled craftsmen, after the title character from The Tale of Cross-Eyed Lefty from Tula and the Steel Flea, written in 1881 by Nikolai Leskov. Hey Scripps! How are you today? I hope your both your hands are doing well. Or three if you have that many. Yeah, I love teaching people that California isn't a leftist haven, actually. We used to live in Los Angeles. I don't know why people think that. Can you explain why someone will even have that perception? I mean, I guess in terms of like queer rights and stuff, especially like the perception of how LA is and how like hippie-ish people think of Californians in a general sense. I guess I kind of understand why people would be like, okay, California or the West Coast is more liberal, so that's probably meaning that it's also more leftist. But honestly, it's just like any place. It's a mix, and it can lean one way, but it's only a lean. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's overall better. Oh man, Fanta, I think you're onto something with that. Oh yeah, I am very not surprised on how many of these things link up with, oh yeah, this thing that's considered bad in society, especially by conservative standards, is actually something that is totally okay in other parts of the world or before like colonialism came and fucked shit up. It's just like stuff with gender and communism and shit like that. It's just like, and like places not being what's the P word? Not patriotic. Patriarchy? Patriarchal? Stuff like patriarchy and stuff like that and gender is like, oh yes, there's like these places that had a whole bunch of different genders and expectations for how a person could be. And it's like, what happened to them? White people. Unfavorable perceptions. The unfavorable associations and connotations of the use of the left hand among cultures was varied. In some areas, in order to preserve cleanliness where sanitation was an issue, the right hand, as a dominant hand of most individuals, is used for eating, handling food, and social interactions. The left hand would then be used for personal hygiene, specifically after urination and defecation. Personal hygiene rules in Islam require this, as derived from the Hadith sources. These rules were imposed on all, no matter their dominant hand. Through these practices, the left hand became known as the unclean hand. I remember hearing about this when we were growing up, and it really fucked with us because we didn't fully understand like all the myriad implications of left-handedness versus right-handedness, and we were still trying to come to terms with the fact that like we didn't really fit in either, because of course after a point we didn't consider ourselves left-handed because we were forced to write right-handedly, but we still favored our left side, and so like there was a lot of stuff that was really weird. And I mean, I hope this isn't TMI, but we wipe our ass with our right hand. And when we heard that the left hand was the unclean hand because that's the one you wipe your ass with, I was like, that doesn't make any sense because I just happened to wipe my ass with my right hand, so I don't know what you're talking about. If you are worried about shaking hands with my shit hand, then the hand that you're reaching for automatically, naturally, is the shit hand. And I took for granted that when people said that, they thought it was just a natural inclination, not something that was forced. And to think that, like, us growing up in a Christian household was told this, a house that was actually anti-Islam, or at the very least, like, looking at Islam as, definitely definitely lesser than Christianity, not necessarily completely bad, but definitely not as good. It's interesting that something that comes from that culture is something that has been picked up as a thing that is like just supposedly ubiquitous. It's like, of course you would wipe your ass with your left hand. Yeah, back before toilet paper, you wiped your ass with your raw hand. I am aware of this. It totally does make sense. From like the understanding of like, oh wait, yeah, no, defecation and stuff like that. And I don't actually know when soap became like common usage. And I have a feeling, or I'm pretty sure that even when soap became like commonly used, it wasn't as available to poor people. And I mean that's a big part of like how like disease and stuff spread and like the shortness of lifespans and stuff. So like they did what they try to do what they had to do. It just sucks that a casualty of that was a disvalue of people who uh had left-handedness. In many religions, including Christianity, I see. In many religions, including Christianity, the right hand of God is the favored hand. For example, Jesus sits on God's right side. God's left hand, however, is the hand of judgment. The archangel Gabriel is sometimes called God's left hand and sits at God's left side. Huh, that's interesting. That reminds me of the concept of having a right hand man. Your second in command is usually considered your right hand. I have sent my right hand to dispose of you. Your right hand comes off? Those who fall from favor with God are sent to the left, as described in Matthew 25:32 through 33, in which sheep represent the righteous and goats represent the fallen. For folks who watch Pulp Fiction with us, hi. And he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on the right, but the goats on the left. In 19th century, oh god, I should have. So this is apparently a series. It's part of a series on discrimination, and I thought that this was just one of the things, because if you can see, there's a lot of different things in the discrimination thingy. We're on anti-left-handedness, but there's also anti-intersex, there's homophobia, there's misandry, misogyny, nepotism. There's a lot of stuff here. But I didn't expect just to be like, oh yes, homosexuals. Can't wait to hear about how left-handedness and homosexuality have been categorized together. In 19th century Europe, homosexuals were referred to as left-handed. In Protestant majority parts of the United Kingdom, Catholics were called left-footers, and vice versa in Catholic majority parts of Ireland and Irish America. Huh. That makes me think of the term alternative. If you don't know, the term like alternative as an alternative music was like code for queer-ish music or gay music or music that appeal to gay people, and a lot of stuff that is like super straight. I shouldn't say super straight. A lot of stuff that is made by people who had no queer inclination for their music were put into the alternative category because they didn't fit into certain standards that certain standards, especially of gender and stuff. I would say that, for example, something like My Chemical Romance definitely has lots of queer sensibilities, but there's lots of bands like, say, Relent K, who definitely get some inspiration from bands like My Chemical Romance. They're literally Christian bands, but are also alternative bands. And if you look at the members of the band Relent K, I'm just using an example from a band we used to follow. They're very alternative. They look like they have a good time in gay bars. And it's like you can be Christian and gay, but also because of the way like Christianity and a lot of Christian communities have framed themselves in opposition to homosexuality, it is unfortunately a what's the word, is a consequence that uh a lot of Christians or Christian things are thought of automatically as anti queer. And yeah, not all Christians or whatever, but meh. I'm being informed that all scissors are right-handed and that left-handed scissors cost $1.50 more on average. That's not surprising to me at all. Scissors are very biased. Various innocuous activities and experiences become rude or even signs of bad luck when left hand becomes involved. In some parts of Scotland, it is considered bad luck to meet a left-handed person at the start of a journey. In Ghana, pointing, gesturing, giving, or receiving items with the left hand is considered taboo and rude. Or rude. A person giving directions will put their left hand behind them, to even physically strain to the point with their right hand if necessary. Various innocuous. Wait, I just read that. Forced use of the right hand. Uh, Owing to cultural and social pressures, many left-handed children were forced to write and perform other activities with their right hands. The conversion can cause multiple problems in developing a left-handed child, including learning disorders and dyslexia and stuttering. Oh my fucking Christ! I'm in pain. I hurt. I mean, yeah, we stutter sometimes and we have dyslexia. So it's just funny that we have those comorbidities. This conversion can cause multiple problems with the developing left-handed child, including learning disabilities, dyslexia, stuttering, and other speech disorders. Shifts from left to right-handed are more likely to be successful than right to left. Though neither have a high success rate. Successful shifters are more likely to become ambi-handed than unsuccessful ones. Convergence can be successful with consistent daily practice in a variety of manual activities, but through activity in the non-dominant left hemisphere, the brain will increase during tasks. So too, activity in the dominant right hemisphere. Consistent left-handers have no higher activity at these task centers than converted left-handers, so it may be inferred that attempts to switch handedness by educational training, far from weakening the functional expression of left-handedness and higher order motor areas of the dominant right-handed hemisphere in face, enhance it. Many Asian countries force their children to become right-handed due to cultural perceptions of bad luck associated with the left hand. Oh my fucking Christ. Are you fucking serious? Etiquette in Asia varies from country to country, even though certain actions may seem to be common. No article in the rules of etiquette nor any list of faux pas can ever be complete, as the perception of behaviors and actions vary. And this is how you go down rabbit holes. I'm not gonna go down this rabbit hole today, though. In India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Indonesia, it has traditionally been perceived as rude behavior to use the left hand for eating, as the left hand is commonly used for tasks considered unclean. In a 2007 study in Taiwan, about 59.3% of children studied had been forced to convert from left-handedness to right-handedness. The study took into account economic status of the children's families and found that children whose parents had less education were more likely to be forced to convert. Also not surprising. I mean, considering that switching hands to right-handedness seemingly benefits the person converted in terms of like adapting to the world that isn't made for them, makes more sense to be forced upon someone who those hurdles would be more detrimental to their quality of life. Although honestly, it's one of those things where it's like you're kind of overcorrecting and trying to fix it, you're causing more problems. Like, I don't know how our handwriting would be if we were allowed to actually have been left-handed, because now our handwriting is fucking atrocious. depending on who's fronting. So it's actually really funny that for us at least, we were being forced to like switch hands, and then people were complaining their handwriting was like so illegible. The study took into account economic status of children's families and found that children whose parents had less education were more likely to be forced to convert. Even among children whose parents had higher levels of education, the conversion rate was 45.7%. Among naturally left-handed Japanese senior high school students, only 0.7% and 1.7% of individuals use their left hand for writing and eating, respectively, though young Japanese are more likely to convert to using chopsticks, right-handed, no forks or spoons, 29.3 to 4.6. The proportion of females subjected to forced conversion is significantly higher compared to males, 95.1% to 81%. Ah, yes. Also gender. Malowin state their views that the left hand is less skilled and less powerful than the right one, as the main reasons for forcing left-handers to convert. Among students, teachers, and parents, 75% said the left hand should not be used to perform habitual activities, and 87.6% of those believe left-handers should be forced to switch dominant hands. Parents and close relatives are most responsible for impressing these beliefs upon their children. In the Soviet Union, all left-handed students were forced to write with their right hand in the Soviet educational system. As a child, British King George the was that sixth was naturally left-handed. He was forced to write with his right hand, as was common practice at the time. He was not expected to become king, so that was not a factor. Damn, even royalty. Fuck. See ya, Void. Well, have a good time working on your Sona. Can't wait to see it. Risk and acceptance of left-handedness. Ooh. On March 8th, 1971, the Florence Times Tri-City Daily reported that left-handed people are becoming increasingly accepted and able to find their right or left place in the world. Oh, that's cute. The Florence Times Tri-Cities Daily also wrote, "We still have a long way to go before the last vestiges of discrimination against left-handedness are uprooted." However, the frequency of left-handed writing in the United States was only 2.1% in 1932, had risen to over 11% in 1972. According to an article, The Washington Post from August 13th, 1979, a University of Chicago psychologist, Jerry Levy, said in 1939, 2% of the population wrote with the left hand. In 1946, it was up to 7.5%. In 1978, 9%. By 1972, 12%. It's leveling off, and I expect that the real number of left-handers will turn out to be about 14%. According to the article by the Washington Post from August 13th to 1979, a University of Michigan study points out that left-handers may not be taking over the world, but 7% of the men and 6% of the women over 40 were interviewed were lefties, but the percentages jumped to well above 10% in the 18 to 39 age group. I think that using this as a microcosm for like general like discrimination and how it affects people, that this is a really interesting like way to go about looking at the wider systemic ways that like people are forced to be a certain way or discriminated against for being the way that they are. Um, Even the phrasing "left-handers may not be taking over the world," as if referencing the thought process of there being more left-handers than right-handers suddenly, and like that framing, even with a left-handedness positive perspective, seems to, I don't know, speak volumes about the way that the majority sees the minority. It's weird, you know? Okay, it's not weird. It's completely normal. And that's the fucked up part. Thank you for the Mega Hydrate! bottle of water. Also, snot. Mm. Snot is not hot until it is. According to the article by the Washington Post of August 13th, 1979, Dr. Bernard McKenna of the National Education Association said there was recognized by medical authorities that left-handedness was normal and that tying the hand up in a child often caused stuttering. I wonder why that is. In Japan, Tokyo psychiatrist Soichi Hakazaki copied with such deep-seated discrimination against left-handed people that he wrote The World of Left-Handers. Hikazawa reported finding situations in which women were afraid their husbands would divorce them for being left-handed. According to the aforementioned article, an official at the Japanese embassy said that before the war, there was discrimination against left-handers. Children were not trained to use their left hand while eating or writing. I used to throw a baseball left-handed, but my grandparents wanted me to throw right-handed. I can throw either way. Today, in the local areas, discrimination may still remain, but on the whole, it seems to be over. There are many left-handers in Japan. In further articles of the Washington Post of December 11th, 1968, Richard M. Restick wrote that left-handedness has become more accepted and people have decided to leave southpaws alone and stop working against left-handedness. In an article by the Goddesden Times of October 3rd, 1993, the newspaper mentioned a 5-year-old named Daniel, writing, the advantages that little Daniel does have by going to school in the 90s that he will be allowed to be left-handed. That wasn't always the case in years past. In a 1998 survey, 24% of the younger generation, left-handed people, reported more attempts to switch their handedness. So again, reflecting on the wider context of all this is reminding me of sometimes how we felt before the attack on trans kids, how certain other trans adults kind of felt, where there was a sort of sense of jealousy for growing up trans right now because of higher visibility, higher levels of acceptance, or at least that was how a certain number of people felt. Not so much anymore, but like the whole concept of we're living in the most progressive time that has ever existed, quote unquote, is a big thing from things to like racial inequality to queer equality and shit like that. And it's so funny to hear people talk about how like, oh yeah, like it's almost all gone. It's like there's only a little bit of racism left, and it's just it's just funny that something like left-handedness is something that I'm literally over here groaning about. Like, no, it is not. The article from the Godson Times was published about a year after we were born. So, like, essentially 5 to 7 years later was when we were forced to be right-handed. And obviously there are a lot more people who are allowed to be left-handed now, but I think that kind of like the anecdote about the person who used to throw a baseball left-handed and then had to become ambidextrous, I think that preserving your left-handedness in as much ways as possible ends up being like part of the adaptability thing. It's like, okay, comparing it to racism, there is a phrase that's commonly said of, it's not enough to not be racist. You have to be actively anti-racist. And in the same way, it's like, it's not enough that people aren't actively painting left-handed people as worse, or trying to in such strong ways to convert people to right-handedness. There needs to be an active acceptance of left-handedness and a consideration of left-handed people in society, as opposed to just an afterthought, or only thinking about it if someone brings it up. because something we think is innocuous can end up having an effect on like countless people and countless lives. And we only ended up having this stream have this topic because we just happened to see a video talking about left-handedness or handedness in general in video games and how that's been represented going forward. Something that feels so arbitrary. It almost felt like clickbait in the sense of just like, oh, this is just fluffy content that's just like, I have nothing better to watch. Let me just watch this thing about handedness in video games. Let me watch this thing about this really niche, stupid, weird thing that like that can put on in the background that probably no one actually cares about. And it's like, actually, the person who made it was like very passionate about this topic, for one, and it reminded me of just how much it actually matters and how much people are like not thought of for like their normal ways of being. Are there any lefties here right now? If so, I hope you're doing okay. Right-handed people, I guess, too. In a 1998 survey, 24% of younger generation. Bro. In a 1998 survey, 24% of younger generation left-handed people reported some attempts to switch their handedness. In 1999, Swiss researchers took 1,700 Swiss adults ages 34 to 74 and divided them into age groups, with the youngest being 35 to 44 and the oldest being 65 to 74. And the researchers found almost twice as many people in the youngest age group considered themselves left-handed compared to the older age group. In addition, the incidence of the older group switching to the right hand for writing was more than triple that of the younger group. The researchers found that among the four age groups, the prevalence of left-handedness declined from 11.9% among 35 to 44-year-olds and roughly 12.5% amongst 45 to 54-year-olds to roughly 8% to 55 to 64-year-olds and 6.2% amongst 65 to 74-year-olds. Additionally, researchers found that only 26.6% of 35 to 44-year-olds switched to right-handedness for writing, and roughly 73% wrote with their left hand. Amongst 45 to 54 adults, roughly 52% write with their right hand, and roughly 48% write with their left hand. Roughly 55 to 64-year-olds wrote that their right hand, and roughly 15% of 55 to 64-year-olds wrote with their left hand. 88.9% of 65 to 74-year-olds wrote with their right hand, while 11.1% wrote with their left hand. Oh my god, that's so many numbers. I can't even keep track of that. Equipment. Because most people are right-handed, most everyday items are mass-produced for ease of use with the right hand. Tools, game equipment, musical instruments, and other items must be specifically ordered for left-handed use, if they are even produced, and are usually more expensive than their right-handed counterparts. At least one specialty store sells only left-handed items. I actually heard that it also makes people struggle with learning certain hobbies because of that. Specifically, something I saw was about music. If you can't afford a left-handed instrument, then for a lot of people, they can't learn as adequately. Scissors. For example, right-handed scissors are arranged so that, in the right hand, fingers and thumb push the blades together, laterally, creating the shear action essential to the scissors' utility. In the left hand, however, fingers and thumb tend to force right-handed blades apart, so that, rather than being sheared, the work material is merely hacked, as if by a knife, or slips between the blades uncut. We had that happen to us so many times, and we were wondering, like, how am I using scissors wrong? And it was like awkward to use and would hurt our hand. Left-handers using right-handed scissors will often try to compensate by forcing the handles apart laterally, causing discomfort or injury to the first knuckle of the thumb. In addition, a right-handed person using right-handed scissors can easily see the cutting line, but for a left-handed user, the upper blade obscures the view. Many scissors are offered as ambidextrous, or suitable for right-handed or left-handed use. Typically, these are merely right-handed scissors with modified handles to permit use in the left hand with less discomfort. But because the blades are still in range for the right-handed use, they still do not perform as well as in the left hand. Computer inputting devices. Input devices for computers can present obstacles to left-handed operation if intended for right-handed use. Some computer setups have the mouse placed on the right side of the keyboard and unable to be repositioned to the left. The mouse itself is also sometimes shaped to fit the right hand better. The functions of mouse buttons, even on mice shaped to fit both hands, default to right-hand use. On two-button mice, the left button under the index finger of a right-handed person is a primary button, while the right button performs secondary functions. On the left screen, pointers themselves are also configured for right-handed people. Most desktop operating systems allow a user to reverse the functionality of mouse buttons to accommodate left-handed use, but left-handed cursors sometimes need to be specifically downloaded. Trackballs and other touchpads are often shaped for right-handed use, even with the ability to change the functionality of buttons. These devices can be difficult for left-handers to use. For a left-handed person, there are computer mice designed for left-handed use, but they are a much smaller segment of the marketplace. Knives, cameras, musical instruments, weapons. We heard a lot about weapons in the video we saw because, of course, you interact in video games with most of the world by shooting things. The majority of firearms are designed for right-handed shooters, with the operating handle, magazine release, or safety mechanism set for manipulation by the right hand, and fire cartridge cases ejected to the right. Also, scopes and sights may be mounted in such a way to require the shooter to place the rifle against the right shoulder. A left-handed shooter must either purchase a left-handed or ambidextrous firearm, which are manufactured in smaller numbers and generally more expensive and or harder to obtain, shoot a right-handed gun left-handed, which presents certain difficulties, such as the controls being improperly located of the left hand, or hot shell casings being ejected towards the shooter's body, especially the eyes, or down the collar or right sleeve. Actually, in the video I keep referencing, it was also of note that if they were trying to have a left-handed reload animation, sometimes there were inconsistencies with the animation to make it flow more easily, and animations that were more true to life actually sometimes showed someone with a left hand trying to reload a right-handed gun even though they're left-handed and struggling with it. Like there are certain things where it'll like bend your finger back in an awkward position because it's not supposed to come from that angle, for example. Sometimes not even with reloading, with shooting. Sometimes just trying to pull a trigger of a right-handed gun as a left-handed person, putting it in your left hand, can be uncomfortable. And some games have actually shown the difference. And apparently one of the best handedness in gaming has been displayed in Alien vs. Predator Colonial Marines? Weird. On forklifts, all the forklift controls are on the right side. Left is for steering. We always wanted a controller that had its face buttons and D-pad switch to see how our brain would how our playing would change based on that, because it would be really interesting to see. But just the fact that, like, generally speaking, face buttons are always on the right side always kind of irked us. But something like a car or like a forklift sounds ultimately scarier because it can ultimately be more dangerous for left-handed people to even operate. Whether or not they're ambidextrous or not, I suppose you could say. Is being ambidextrous like being bisexual? Them sustaining as variants have a fixed ejection port, But being a conventional design, not a bullpup, the ejaculation port, the ejection port is forward of the operator and hence able to be fired either handed. Circa 1985, with the introduction of the M16A2 version, a case deflector was incorporated adjacent to the ejector port to direct discarded shells in a more forward direction, making the rifle even more left-hander operator friendly. The deflector is not always effective, however, as the ejected shells still stand a chance of hitting the left-handed shooter's cheek, especially in windy conditions. Gosh, that's something to think about. Like, sometimes putting the struggles of being left-handed into a story could be really interesting. Like having a character who shoots really well, but like between reloads is really susceptible to being attacked because they use a right-handed gun but are left-handed, for example. Or having a boss, for example, in a game that's left-handed and they're shooting at you, and when they reload, they have a blind spot because their case shoots into their face, would be really interesting. And also whether it's video games or other types of media, even for a right-handed person, thinking about how someone will reload left-handedly can be important because of the thing of dual wielding, which isn't a thing that most people do in real life. Dual wielding is very ineffective for using a gun, especially in terms of aiming. Proper gun operation, you put both hands on a gun. I guess not exactly super straight arms, like technically straight arms, but like slightly bent to absorb some of the recoil, because it'll definitely hurt you more, especially with like a gun with like really strong recoil, to have your arms be rigid. It's really funny how you can have a headmate with hobbies, and it's just like, why do I know this? Why do I know how to hold a gun? We're also raised by a cop, so there's also that. In our universe, left-handedness is more common. Ah, yes, another way America is worse than everywhere else. Yeah, I cute a gator on my bed. Language. Gosh, expressions and colloquialisms. Handwriting. Left-handed people who speak Arabic, Persian, Urdu, Hebrew, or any other language that conventionally uses a right-to-left script do not have the same difficulties with writing. The right-to-left nature of these writing systems prevents left-handers from running their hand on the ink as happens to left to right-handed languages. That was actually a problem we had too. Our handedness would constantly make the ink we were writing with, or even like pencil marking, smudge. Because writing, then moving one's hands away from its side of the body can cause smudging, or if the outward side of the hand is allowed to drag across the writing, it's considered easier to write the Latin alphabet with the right hand than with the left. Furthermore, it's considered more difficult to write legible Chinese characters with the left hand than it is to write Latin letters, though difficulty is subjective and depends on the person in question. Left to right alphabets can be written smudge-free and in proper forward slant with the left hand if the paper is turned 1/4 clockwise, 90 degrees to the right, and the left hand is drawn towards the body on forward strokes, and left to right upward strokes as expressed in directionally of the text. It is also possible to do calligraphy in this posture with the left hand, but using right-handed pen nibs. Otherwise, left-handed pen nibs are required in order to get the thick to thin stroke shapes correct for most typefaces. The left-handed calligrapher is very likely to smudge the text. Left-handed pen nibs are not generally easy to find, and strokes may have to be done backwards from traditional right-handed calligraphy work. Rules to avoid nib jamming and splatter. Left-handed people have an advantage in learning 19th century copper plate hands, which control line width by pressure on the point. At least we get one win. Civic life. Schooling. Because almost all students in public schools are right-handed, most commonly used implements are designed for right-handers, from pencil sharpeners to scissors to desks. The consequences to left-handed students can vary from decreased academic performance or physical ailments to nothing at all. In many classrooms and lecture halls, desks are designed so that the writing surface is attached to the chair instead of separate from it. In this design, the desk is attached to the right side, offering an armrest for right-handed people to use while writing. In some desks, the writing surface does not extend fully to the left, necessitating a left-hander user to turn their body in order to write properly, sometimes causing back, neck, and shoulder problems. This contorted posture may also cause the student to be accused of cheating. Wow, this is insidious as fuck. In some cases, however, large lecture halls will use left-handed desks on the leftmost column of each section so left-handed people can comfortably write without bumping against the neighbor. Oh, This is like finding out you're gay. I mean, I already knew that we were left-handed or whatever, but just the concept of, oh, that's why we liked sitting on the end at the end row in college. The more you know. The right-handed bias is reflected in standardized tests as well. Multiple choice tests tend to put the question on the left side of the page and the answers on the right side. If the answers must be filled in within a separate booklet, it can be awkward and uncomfortable for a left-handed student to line up the booklet with the answers. The time it takes to find a comfortable, convenient position cuts into test-taking time, resulting in rushed answers and unchecked work. I mean, standardized tests suck anyway, and that's just another reason why they do. In Vietnam, schools officially require students to write with their right hands, and some teachers of grade 1, when writing is taught, would implement that rule by deducting points from tests written by the left hand. The civic education textbook for grade 6 mentions a student thanking her old teacher for helping her write with her right hand and stopping her from using her left hand to write. The authors Ardela, Alfredo, and Rosselli Diego in their article Handedness in Colombia, Some Associated Conditions claims attending school results in a significant social pressure to use the right hand, not only in writing but also in other activities. I definitely think that as well. Employment. In research done to the relations of handedness and employment, researchers may start their experiments believing left-handers earn lower wages than their right-handed counterparts due to effects like difficulty using right-handed tools and increased risk of illness. Ooh! It also is reflective of how capitalism fucks you over. So in any way that you're disadvantaged, it is a pressure to adapt and work as if you're a way you're totally not, or else your disadvantages will be more pronounced. Like how people might be pressured to not talk about their neurodiversity status. Like, if you're autistic and you don't think that a job you're applying for will hire you if you tell them you're autistic, or at the very least, that if you apply and tell them you're autistic, and you ask for accommodations, you might be worried that you will not get those accommodations. And it's just better to not have asked and not gotten them than to have asked and be completely ignored. And it's like, well, you need money to survive, and usually you need a job for that. So fuck it, I guess I gotta be right-handed now, essentially. Gosh, that is almost like a metaphor now. But considering apparently in some places, calling someone a lefty was a way to like to call them gay without calling them gay. I mean, like having that overlap is kind of funny. And I'm also thinking about like the awkward way you have to sit on right-handed desks in schools, and how that could accidentally overlap with, or not accidentally, but just randomly overlap with that stereotype of gay people always sit weird. It was like, what happened? Was I left-handed first or was I gay first? Why am I sitting this way? During residency periods in operation theaters, the right-handed surgeons get irritated by left-handed residents, and they also give less performance scoring compared to their right-handed residents. Wow, there's a lot of small stuff too, and I think that's kind of what makes it so insidious, that it just piles up and piles up and piles up, and it's like, oh, it's this thing. Oh, I guess that's not like super duper bad. Like if it's only that, and it's like when you get to like the 12th, 13th, 15th thing, you're just like, damn. Yeah, being left-handed has a lot of challenges. And that was just a Wikipedia article. I didn't even read all of it. So this is like a blog, I guess, but it was the first thing that I ran into that talked about how like being forced to be right-handed like changes your brain, and so that was really interesting to me, and I immediately tried to find something to substantiate it, and I did find something to substantiate it, but like I still wanted to read it since it was instrumental in me like even navigating, oh wait, it changes your brain. Although obviously the Wikipedia article did mention the brain stuff too, it just mentions it in like a consequentialism way, if you or in a general consequentialism way. Oh, you're forced to be right-handed? I guess you're dyslexic now. But some of the stuff that I found gets really specific on what happens to your brain. So specific that I can't go over it all because it'd be too much. Also, it's like too jargon heavy and will kill you. Switching in handedness changes the brain. Forcing lefties to be righties results in more brain activity. Southpaw, goofy, or just plain lefty are some of the main names that left-handers have been called. In certain societies, the aversion can go so far that some left-handers are forced to write with their right hand regardless of their natural tendencies. Now, a study of such converted left-handers has found the way that their brains are organized and work, and how hard particular regions work changes as a result of this switch. Some of the areas of the brain continue to look like those of a practicing lefty, whereas other areas switch to the patterns of a righty, the research reveals. The question now is, do converts suffer because of the extra attention that they exert? Says Stefan Koppel of the University College of London, who led the work. The answer to that is yet unknown. Keep in mind, this was written in 2007. Mirror image. The hand used to write with is generally controlled by the opposite side of the brain. In right-handed people, movements related to the left side of the brain are more active when they move the fingers of their right hand. But converting from being left-handed to right-handed doesn't simply move brain activity to the other half of the brain. Koppel and his colleagues found. The team tested right-handers, left-handers, and converts from left to right-handedness to a simple task in which they press a button with the other hand in response to seeing particular symbols. Throughout the task, their brain activity was monitored by a magnetic resonance imaging (MRI) scan. Oh gosh, that must have been super uncomfortable. One movement-related area of the brain was, as expected, most active in the right hemisphere for left-handers and the left hemisphere for right-handers, including natural lefties who converted to using their right hand. But activity in this region was greater in the converts, the researchers found. The more fully converted to right-handing the lefty had become, the greater this activity. But a second set of brain regions involved in planning movements stubbornly refused to switch and continue to act like those left-handers and people who have switched to right-handedness. These stubborn regions were also more active to converts than those who stuck with left-handedness. They still look like left-handers, but even more emphasized, says Koppel, whose results are published in the Journal of Neuroscience. Hard workers? There may be gray activity in their brains, but it would be a jump too far to conclude that converted lefties are adversely affected, says Claire Porak, a psychologist at the Pennsylvania State University. I wouldn't interpret that as their brains working harder, she says. A lot of left switch handers are adept at using both hands for many manual skills, she notes. This fits in well with the fact that there was activity on both sides of the brain in converted lefties. Although it's less common in the United States. Excuse me. Although it's less common in the United States and Europe to force people to become right-handed writers, the practice still goes on elsewhere. Porak has teamed up with Brazil-based researcher Lee Martin of the Federal University of Para in Belém to study the characteristics of natural lefties who convert. In Brazil, switching is an active practice, but even though many people change their writing hand, the researchers have found other behaviors remain firmly left-handed. That is what we found as well. The study could reveal things about the brain beyond the involvement in handedness, says Koppel. It shows how flexible the brain is in terms of which regions can do what. For example, the key thing is that there are areas that can be influenced by training and others that resist this. It's not only interesting in regards to handedness, but also in terms of plasticity. That is really interesting. Also, it makes me think of, was it Phineas Gage? The guy who got the, spike in his brain? You would think before that happened, and it was an example to medical science of just how adaptable, or I guess plastic the brain is, that it can operate without certain regions. He stayed alive for a number of years afterwards, though people say that he was a worse person. He was more impulsive. He was quicker to anger apparently, and he got into more debaucherous behavior after the accident, is said. I cannot confirm this, or I have not confirmed this. But that's what the legend says, right? But to think that the brain can adapt with just straight up losing parts is really interesting. So of course, if a brain could survive like that, then of course it can. Then of course it can adapt to using different parts of the brain for different things that it wasn't originally doing. Though I hadn't read this article all the way through at first, it's interesting that it says what the opposite of what I thought it was gonna say in terms of a definite extra burden on converts for I guess the brain thing, especially considering the higher chance of converts developing learning disabilities or speech impairments. I just think it's interesting. But also, this is in 2007, so we'll see with this next one that, what is this? What year was this? The Journal of Neuroscience. Nurture versus nature. Long-term impact of forced right-handedness on structure of paracentral cortex and basal ganglia. I still don't know when this was posted. March 3rd, 2010. So this is 3 years later that this was done. Also, what's a basal ganglia? The basal ganglia, pronounced basal. Oh, basal. The basal ganglia are a group of structures near the center of your brain that form important connections. These connections allow different areas of your brain to work together. The basal ganglia manages the signals of your brain sends to help you move your muscles. That makes sense. Okay. Abstract. Does a conflict between inborn motor preferences and educational standards during childhood impact the structures of an adult human brain? To examine the issue, we acquired high-resolution T1 weighted magnetic resonance scans, MRI, of the whole brain in adult converted left-handers who have been forced as children to become deadstal writers. Analysis of structural forces revealed that consistent right and left-handers showed an interhemispheric asymmetry in the surface area of the central succules with a greater surface con- contralateral to the dominant hand. This pattern was reversed in the converted group, who showed a larger surface of central succuus in their left non-dominant hemisphere, indicating plasticity of the primary sensory-motor cortex caused by forced use of the non-dominant hand. Voxel-based morphometry showed a reduction of gray matter volume in the middle part of the left putamen in converted left-handers relative to both consistently handed groups. A similar trend was found in the right putamen. Converted subjects with at least one left-handed first-degree relative showed a correlation between the acquired left-handed advantage for writing and the structural changes in putamen and paracentral cortex. Our results show that a specific environmental challenge during childhood can shape the macroscopic structure of the human basal ganglia. The smaller and normal putamen volume differs markedly from previously reported enlargement of cortical gray matter associated with the skill acquisition. This indicates a different response of the basal ganglia to early environmental challenges, possibly related to processing of pruning during motor development. So when I read this originally, my brain went immediately to, so there's more going on when you have a convert writing. Like, this obviously is related to motor skills, but it doesn't outright say in abstract that it makes motor skills worse. But having like more gray matter or less gray matter, I think what most people assume would be, if you have more brain matter, you have more ability to have nuance or extra dexterity. That would be the assumption, or at least that was my assumption at first. And then of course there's this term here, pruning, and of course pruning means like to clean up, to clean up something by, usually in botany, of like clearing off branches, like almost as if they're straight hairs. Though at a glance, I wouldn't know that what pruning meant in a neurological context, and if pruning is a good or a bad thing. And stuff like that was exactly why I was like, oh yeah, I definitely want to dig into this, because like this research is kind of thick. Thick. I thought I looked it up. At-time pruning, an essential step underlying the developmental plasticity of neuronal connections. Regressive events play a key role in modifying neural connectivity in earlier development. An important regressive event is the pruning of neuronal processes. Pruning is a strategy often used to selectively remove exuberant neuronal branches and connections to the immature nervous system to ensure the proper formation of functional circuitry. In the following review, we discuss our present understanding of the cellular and molecular mechanisms that regulate the pruning of axons during national neuronal development as well as in neurological diseases. The evidence suggests that there are several similarities between the mechanisms that are allowed in developmental axon pruning and axon elimination in disease. In summary, these findings provide researchers with a unique perspective on how developmental plasticity is achieved and how to develop strategies to treat complex neurological diseases. So I guess pruning could technically be something positive, but like it sounds like it reduces plasticity, and I think that that's generally not a good thing. But I think going further into this will shed light on that a little bit more. But I wanted to look at not the plasticity. I wanted to look at the pruning thing just to get some context for it, as opposed to like just going into it dry. And this is like some really heavy academic stuff right here. Not as easy to navigate, and this isn't our discipline of like this isn't like our chosen discipline of interest. So going from it from top to bottom probably would not be as useful. But I think trying to see what the experiment or the study like found would be interesting. Zorbeltis, thank you for your raid. Whoa. Thank you so much. How was your stream? Let's just shout you out. You're playing Dead by Daylight. Ooh. Very cool. It is nice to know when someone actually has looked at the rules. Where it's like, wait, pee my pants. This is a peeing pants positive chat. I hope everyone's doing good. Happy New Year. Welcome, Raiders. This is the Fluff by Entertainment System. We're plural streamers, meaning we all share a body. We all have different personas that we use to show ourselves as individuals. And we all have different interests in gaming and stuff like that. But generally, a lot of things that are central to our channel and our content are stuff like leftism, things like mental health, and what have you. We're also kinky. There's a kink positive chat. There's also obviously an 18 plus stream. But we like having interesting discussions about all sorts of things like media literacy to stuff like we're talking about today, like anti-left-handed ableism, which could sound very ridiculous to some folks, but actually is actually a big problem. But too commonly an invisible one. I like water sports, but I don't know about Omo. Omarashi is being desperate can increase enjoyment of many things, including piss. We also talked about that just a little while ago. I was reading a article. I was reading a Wikipedia article about anti-left-handedness, and one of the things that was included was right-handed firearms. And it's not just like an inconvenience to have something like a firearm be right-handed by default, and making it really hard to acquire a left-handed firearm. But also it can hurt you if you're using a right-handed gun left-handedly. The like empty hot shell casings can get ejected into your face. or even like something like a reload or a trigger pull can be awkward and cause you pain, or have you doing something at an awkward angle you shouldn't have to do it at, because things aren't made for you. Also, we found out that even a lot of scissors that are touted as left-handed friendly or ambidextrous aren't actually that way. They're just right-handed scissors with a left-handed handle. But the blade positioning is still for right-handed people. Slightly Tango, thank you for following. Your future will be filled with happiness and sadness. I hope you can get some happiness this new year, though. Which I mean, obviously, it's kind of like one of those like capitalism things where they'll just sell you the image of something better for you. Like how there's like, you know, the pink tats. If you buy a razor that's marketed towards women, you're literally just gonna pay more. Even though it doesn't cost them any more to have it be pink. It's just a thing that is done to get you to buy a thing based on your identity. And there's a difference between making something so that someone can be accommodated and making something so someone can feel like visible, but it's not actually something to help them. And that's kind of what that is. Most firearms, if you are left-handed, will misfire and injure you. What? I did not know that. Wow. Huh, you must be a gun nerd. We're sort of gun nerds. We have some liking of gun related stuff, though it does feel weird at times because we don't think we should ever like actually own a gun. One of our parents was left-handed, so we knew some of the issues from a third-party perspective. Oh, I see. Oh, Sir Beltus, are you part of a system as well? I am noticing your choice of words. A couple of firearms are ambidextrous, but they're extremely rare. I'm not surprised. I mean, it's super funny because apparently about 10% of the population is left-handed, which is way bigger than a lot of percentages of like minorities. And yet, like, left-handedness is probably one of the most underserved without anyone really noticing. Oh, for anyone new, feel free to also include your pronouns if you want to, because if you have pronouns you like to be called, I'd like to call you them or be aware of them. I hope you're having a good day, Ava. Welcome to the fold. We had to take some post-stream care things and other things for a bit, so we'll be lurking. Okie dokie. Good job taking care of yourself. I know that can be really hard. I'm a little bit of a gun nerd. Honestly, I think we're mostly gun nerds because of Resident Evil. Because, I guess ironically, because of being autistic. Ironically, because of being autistic, being able to look at a lot of details and stuff is something we really, really love. So it's like, oh yeah, I can look at all the things in my inventory. You can look at stuff for puzzle-related reasons, and in like Resident Evil Remake 1 specifically, I remember you can literally rotate your gun. You can like rotate your gun and look at it, and even if you press the button to get out of the description screen, it will literally cock the gun and like show you parts of the gun sometimes, which I thought was really cool growing up, and we just kind of started getting into gun porn that way. Resident Evil is so big on gun porn. Apparently, in terms of handedness, Resident Evil 5 is one of the most handedness aware games. And Resonance of Fate? Apparently Resonance of Fate. I have a crack on my bed saying that Resonance of Fate is one too. Resonance of Fate is a great game that is really, really hard, and I want to try, but also is really, really hard and has like honestly, uh, is not very beginner positive because it has so much shit. Uh, like the tutorial is like 27 pages of information. But it is a very gun porny game. I mention it because a lot of video games will to show left-handed options for say reloading or aiming will generally just mirror a character model, which if you know anything about like art type stuff, just mirroring something can show imperfections that would not be there normally because it wasn't made with that like angle in mind. But instead of doing that, Chris is right-handed, and Sheva, the other character that you can play as, is left-handed, and all of her animations are distinctly left-handed, but not a mirror of Chris's, which will also make sense because they have totally different builds. Because one punches boulders and one does backflips. I like the mechanics of gunsmithing, but I don't like what guns are actually meant for. I really appreciate that. We felt kind of alone in a way, especially with gun stuff. And especially being as lefty as we are. May the force be with you. As much as guns were cool and stuff, and even being raised by a cop, it was just like, but guns are for killing. and that always felt weird, right? And also we're black, so like wanting to be like into guns automatically comes into a lot of intersections of weird bias. Um, we've only touched an actual gun twice in our life. One was a cop's gun, the other was a gang member's gun. Life is weird sometimes. And we also are someone who struggles with a lot of mental health stuff, including like depression and suicidal ideation. So one of the best ways to not die is to not have something that can easily kill you on hand at all times. Though we do have a friend that is into gun replicas that has made us aware that if we wanted a like distinguished replica of say a samurai edge, that we could get one that won't actually fire. My pronouns are it, she. I'm trans feminine and questioning if plural. Oh, okie dokie. Well, I hope that this space can be a good place for you to explore that, or just find comfort in being around other folks. A lot of our audience is trans feminine, and a lot of our audience is plural. Dark Souls 2 is the only game that makes leftedness truly equal. Oh, really? I know that there are certain Dark Souls games where you can put things in the left or right hand, but I wasn't sure if they had specific animations for it. The video that got us spurred on this topic in the first place was mostly concentrating on gun-related stuff as opposed to sword-related stuff. Although probably the most famous video game character who's like canonically left-handed is Link from Legend of Zelda. May the force be with you. Yeah. We usually say may the force be with you or may the void be with you when most people would say gesundheit or bless you. It's a thing that happened because of things. We've been doing it for a long time. People don't usually sneeze around us while we're on stream, so it just kind of was funny to happen for the first time. Yay, 2023 is full of firsts. Dark Souls 2 is the only one that makes it truly equal. You can equip weapons in left hand in other games, but you are legitimately putting yourself at a massive disadvantage. Wait, really? Wait, why? It is funnier because I heard your voice oscillate before you said that. Oh, right, because you heard me turn. Real. Mic dynamics. So the result of this study says there's no differences observing in writing kinesthetics between right and converted left-handers. The writing quotient in right-handers range from 0.87 to 2.79 to 2.79. in the left-handers. In the converted group, the writing quotient was comparable with right-handers ranging from 0.94 to 2.91. No correlation between individual writing quotients and Edinburgh scores were observed in any group, indicating that they reflect different aspects of handedness. The ANOVA revealed that the volume of gray matter in the middle part of the left putamen significantly differed between groups. To follow up on this finding, we tested for changes with handedness in the putamen of both hemispheres. Post hoc tests indicate that the group effect in the uvula was caused by a smaller middle section of the putamen in converted left-handers relevant to consistent right-handers. There's a suggestion of a subtle reduction in local volume of left putamen in the consistent left-handers compared with right-handers. The post hoc analysis revealed similar handedness related changes in the same subregion of the right putamen. Again, driven by a relative reduction in putamen gray matter volume in the converted group. However, this finding did not survive correction for multiple comparisons. The local volume of the left putamen did not differ between converted groups from left-handed families compared to those without. Only converted left-handers showed a linear relationship between the writing laterally quotient and the left putamen gray matter volume of voxels surviving the FWE correction and the category comparisons related above. Oh gosh, can I get some layman shit, please? Discussion. We found two structural signatures of forced right-handedness in the adult human brain. First, surface-based structural analysis showed a reversal of left-right symmetry of area in the converted group, with a larger central suckless surface area in the left non-dominant hemisphere. Second, VBM identified a relative reduction in gray matter volume of the middle part of the left putamen, with a similar trend in the homologous part of the right putamen. Changes in structural asymmetry of the parenchymal cortex. Structural changes of the basal ganglia. Effect of family history. Prompted by one of the reviewers, we explored whether a positive family history of left-handedness was associated with distinct structural changes in context of forced dental writing. Only the 8 converted subjects with at least one left-handed first-degree relative showed a correlation between the acquired right-hand advantage for writing and the structural changes in the colloidal and subcolloidal levels. The more that familial left-handers acquired a right-hand advantage for writing, the more the central sulcal area volumetric changes were lateralized to the right dominant hemisphere and the greater volume of the left middle putamen. No such correlations were found in the remaining 24 converted subjects without family history of left-handedness. The correlation pattern suggested that in the context of familial left-handedness, the motor system deals more efficiently with forced dental writing if there is little left-to-right shift of the inborn left hemispheric dominance in the paracentral executive cortex. The difference between converted subjects with or without a family history of left-handedness underscores the relevance of genetic factors of the individual manifestations of left-handedness, but it also reflects differences in social attitudes to left-handedness if a parent or sibling is also left-handed. Whatever the cause, these findings also provide evidence for subgroups and populations of people with converted handedness, and most likely also inconsistent left-handers, which are prominently influenced by genetic factors. Such factors need to be taken into account in future work. This is really, really, really hard to parse. I'm not gonna lie here. I'm not gonna even joke about it. Like there's a lot of jargon here, and it's hard to navigate. And looking at the original thingy, the nature versus nurture, long term impact of forced right handedness on structural precipital cortex and basal ganglia. It's talking about how forced left handedness changes the brain and how the structures of the brain respond to that. But you have to have the context of understanding what those structures are for. But even just looking up basal ganglia like I did only shows us so much about that. And considering what these results seem to me to suggest, seems to be that if you that the impact on like your dexterity, or I guess your ability to adequately operate right-handedly is strengthened if you happen to have been forced to write left-handedly, but you have left-handed people in your family, which I think also could be a nature thing, not just a nurture thing. A nurture thing, not just a nature thing, because genetics probably do or definitely have a effect on this all. But also, if there are positive attitudes in your family about left-handedness, then you're probably not going to be forced to write right-handedly constantly. Or if your school is forcing it on you, then your family might not, and people in your family might be more empathetic to struggles with handedness, and you might be even encouraged to write left-handedly or operate left-handedly in your day-to-day life outside of school, which I think is very important. And when you compare this to other different types of being, I mean, I'm thinking of like language, for example. There are people who there's a pressure for like first generation immigrants to not speak their family's language, and some people even have a disdain for the language of their culture because it outs them as not being like as close to an American ideal or as close to the national ideal of whatever country they're in, and there's a lot of pressure to convert yourself to what's expected of you in this country as a citizen of that country. And even though America is supposed to be a melting pot and we accept all these different cultures, at least on paper, there is a high value on adaptation and like, for lack of a better word, cutting off parts of yourself to fit in. And so, because of that, I see a very strong similarity in how having a very supportive family of being left-handed can have similar effects to, say, having positive attitudes of, say, queerness in your family. Even though society will look down on you, even though society will treat you a certain way, having a safety net of positivity can really help with that and help you figure out and navigate those things. And back. We're a newly discovered system and transfeminine. Our pronouns are differently per alter, but we all accept Fey Fem. Okie dokie. Oh, Fey. Okay. One of my, actually several of my headmates use Fey pronouns, but was it Fea? That's Fee. Fae. They use Fae as in Fae. Fae Fem pronouns. Gotcha. Welcome back, and I'm glad you took care of yourself. You can't block in your right hand in other games unless you two-hand a shield in the right hand. Oh, that sucks. I don't think that that's equality. Though I guess if they're trying to mirror how difficult it can be to use right-handed weaponry while you're left-hand dominant, it can be a representation of that, but Feels mean. So I will definitely look back at this. This is definitely like a video essay worthy, like talking about this, especially as using it as a jumping off point to talk about like societal injustice in general. Is left-handedness a handicap? The short and useless answer is yes and no. This is an interesting. This is an interesting academic piece of work. Sounds like this might actually be a little bit more, a little bit less jargon heavy. Certainly in earlier days, senscrality, senscrility, the quality or state of having the left or one or more of its parts as the hand or eye different from and usually more efficient than the right to those corresponding parts. Oh, sinistrality. Wait, that's an actual word? I was trying to reclaim the whole sinister thing because it has a root in left-handedness, but the fact that there's literally sinistrality, literally meaning being left-handed. That's so wild. Okay, okay. This is starting off really interesting. Certainly, in earlier days, sinistrality was a problem for children learning to write. An eminent sinister-handed Dallas plastic surgeon reported. In Paracachal school, summer school, the nuns were determined to change me and actually tied my left hand behind my back. The result of this action was tremendous tenacity and endurance. We write left to right and smear our fresh ink across the page. He added, numerous theories throughout history have claimed that being left-handed causes development and immune disorders. It also has been said that left-handers die younger, have more diseases, and are even considered inept. None of these theories have been proven. I wonder why he said that. Oh, sorry, I wonder when he said that. This is from 2008. I don't think that left-handers die sooner or have a higher chance of getting like autoimmune diseases, but I guess I'm mincing my ideas right now because what I'm thinking of is being left-handed and being forced to being right-handed, which we already discussed. Seems to have for some people a result of developmental and speech impairments. So I was thinking of that, but being left-handed in and of itself does not make you in any way worse than anyone else, and doesn't make you more likely to get a disease or be, or as far as I know, be like neurodivergent or disabled in other ways. Meow. Love they say that the short answer is useless. I think it's really interesting. It kind of reminds me of like the argument of whether autism is a disability or not, and of course, the answer to that will a lot depend on the person's proximity to autism and I guess the school of thought that they're coming from, as well as when they think of an autistic person, if their immediate thought goes to high functioning or what is thought of as high functioning versus what is thought of as low functioning. People who need help to like live day by day, people would say generally that autism is a disability. But people who just need certain accommodations or like are just quote unquote weird but can operate generally undetected in society. Hi, that used to be us at least, are seen as like, well, I mean, it's just quirky, and it's like autism is not just quirky, but a lot of people are trying to frame autism in a much less pathologized way. And of course, we're big on those ideas because we also seek to have a lot of stuff be less pathologized. For example, like being plural. So it is very interesting to see this overlap between things we think about for, say, being autistic and now being left-handed. Though similarly, it might not be the best thing to be pursuing to try to answer the question of if being left-handed or being autistic is a disability. It is something that is a difference in people that does need accommodation, no, regardless if you want to use that word or not. Remember that Ben Franklin had a miserable left-handed childhood, and as a adult wrote a petition to those who have had the superintendency of education, in which he recorded, "If by chance I touched a pencil, pen, or a needle, I was bitterly rebuked, and more than once I have been beaten. I have been beaten for being awkward and wanting a graceful manner." He ended his epistle by signing it. "I am, with profound respect, sirs, your obedient servant, the left hand." Wait, that's like what was that? That's like that play. That makes me think of Hamilton. Your obedient servant, H. Ham, H. Burr. Oh, sorry, A, not H. I'm gay. I like Hamilton. This is not a surprise to anyone. Really dislike the high functioning and low functioning terminology. Same. And even the wider context of, I guess, Asperger's and things like that. We don't really like defining their existence by the term that a Nazi came up with to say that certain autistic people were actually desirable, saying that the others weren't. Not super great. And the whole low functioning, high functioning dichotomy definitely does more. Actually, I wouldn't even say more. It just does damage. I don't think there's anything good about the high functioning, low functioning framing that society has gone by for trying to understand autism, because it characterizes people who can mask as somehow like lucky or not in needing of help, and just kind of like somehow better than everyone else because of savantship. And of course, the reverse of that being the huge negative portion of being seen of or being framed as autistic. Because even people who aren't autistic, much like people who aren't even trans, can suffer from like anti-autism ableism. The R slur was flung at us way before we even knew autism was. And the concept of like, you know, not being able to understand something or being in your own world being like something automatically negative is, of course, like shitty. I find a lot of ableism about developmental disabilities and shit. Same. We definitely grew up in a world. Well, I mean, we all grew up in an ableist world, but I suppose I should say, like our upbringing was characterized a lot by like an ability to do, and any inability to do something being a result of, or being seen as a result of, some sort of inadequacy that you had to prove you are not an X because of. Um, and a lot of times that X has something to do with like being quote unquote stupid. And if you go into the etymology and the history of words like stupid and imbecile and stuff like that, it directly correlates with ableism, because it is referential to things that now would be understood under many different terms, autism included. But a lot of developmental disabilities are just seen as things that make you unworthy of compassion or make you just easy to take advantage of. Pretty much a huge blanket of infantilization, and not even like an infantilization that has a sort of like overbearing, I'm going to take care of you sort of sense. And infantilizing is in, you can't do for yourself and you shouldn't even try sort of sense. A very defeatist sense of things. It's it's hard. It's very hard, and we were not able to face that we had any like developmental or like educational disabilities for a very long time because we saw it as oppositional to our own concept of being smart. We were a gifted kid, and so we saw ourselves, and people were telling us to see ourselves as well. If you're smart, then you couldn't possibly have a developmental disability. When in fact, having developmental disabilities informed how we went about navigating like our own education. And of course, you have to. And it's not just about like neurodivergencies or disabilities. Uh, like if you are a minority in a lot of ways, you do have to compensate for the ways that society mistreats you or generally put you at a disadvantage. So that's not a surprise at all. It's very depressing how much people are just casually eugenicists. Yeah, it really is, and people don't even recognize what's eugenicist because of how black and white it's historically been presented as. Like someone thinks eugenics is just like. I mean, I think that some people even struggle to recognize that forced sterilization is eugenics is eugenesis, especially if it's positioned in a way where it seems like you have a choice when really it's like a shitty ultimatum. Like in some countries to this day, if you want to be legally recognized as the gender that you actually are, as opposed to the gender you were prescribed at birth, then you have to become infertile. Like, actually go through an operation to make you infertile. And it's stuff like that that is like really, really gross and disgusting. It is generally thought that there is an increased incidence of injuries in left-handed people because we live in a right-handed world and have done so for many centuries. Some would have us believe we are right-handed because our early hominoid ancestors are thought to have coupled early speech to muscle actions already lateral. Excuse me. Our early hominoid ancestors are thought to have coupled early speech to muscle actions already lateralized to our brain's left hemisphere. In an earlier point in hominoid evolution, I tend to prefer to the concept of Calvin, who suggested that selective pressures on infant-carrying females throwing missiles when hunting led to a preferential right-handedness. They carried their infant on their left side of their body, where the heartbeat is stronger, and thereby keeping the infant more secure and quiet. Today, the environment of our world strongly favors the right-handed majority. Osmond Samili et al., in their paper published in 2004, cataloged some of the hazards facing the sinister-handed. Although they are considered to be more intelligent and artistic, studies have documented that they are more prone to unintentional injuries, head trauma, motor vehicle accidents, and increased sports injuries. Left-handed industrial workers are 5 times more prone to finger amputations than right-handed workers. In 1989, enumerated many of the problems left-handers are facing with. Everyday implements such as gear shifts, scissors, and can openers are biased towards right-handed use. Even in their homes, the sinistrals are forced to accommodate to everyday items such as spiral-bound notebooks with the spiral on the wrong side, electric irons with the power cable protruding to the right, corkscrews, light bulbs, and garden garden shears, and potato peelers. On entering a building, we right-handers instinctively turn to our right. Intelligent shopkeepers know this and display attractive and usually expensive goods to the right. Even traffic patterns are designed to utilize this right-turning bias. In America, I believe in the UK, and in some other countries as well. The driver's side is flipped. So I would imagine if the driver's side is flipped, then that also means that there's like a turning preference for that in those for that side in those societies. Could be wrong though. Good morning, Issy. Wow, you're up early. Or am I just? No, you're not up early. It's 4:20. It's just past 4:20 for me. Happy 4:20. You don't need to do that here anymore. Unless you have a criminal record, then you need to be sterilized. We live in Sweden. That's fucked up. Oh, you committed a crime and you're trans? Guess you can't have children. Sweden said, "We see that there's gay in crimes. If we stop the gay, then we'll stop the crimes." Gosh, that's so dystopian. Especially with the consideration that if you went to jail and you got out of jail, then presumably, but society tends to say or tends to pretend that you have been what's the word? The word escapes me. Um, then you have been changed for the better. Apparently, that like by going to prison, you have been reformed. That's the word. Reformation. Even though like prison in general around the world is more about punishment than anything else, and isolation, and of course forced labor. But the point I'm trying to make is, it flies in the face of the tenets that legal justice is supposedly founded on, of the humanity of someone who has done a crime, to say that, oh, not only in this case that you just made me aware of someone needing to be sterilized if they want to legally change their gender in Sweden, the thing of in countries like my own in the U.S. where if you went to prison, then you aren't allowed to apply, or you aren't allowed to get, even if you were to apply, certain like social safety nets, like food stamps and whatever, like your ability to gain access to societal safety nets. They're supposed to like keep you from like dying of destitution. Even though if you go to jail, your likelihood of being impoverished is super high, is just like so hypocritical, and I hate it. Sweden is very dystopian currently, which is why we are trying our best to move to the Netherlands. Oh, really? Shit, I didn't even know. A lot of people talk about Sweden as like some sort of utopia, especially in terms of like the rate of crime, and like quality of life of people. But I do think that Sweden also has like an aging population, which could also like make certain measures of quality of life kind of skewed towards like the older generation, whereas people like Gen Z and millennials are automatically just gonna have higher rates of poverty. I'm so glad to be on be on the internet and be an internet critter and be like able to connect with people from different countries and understand what the world is like from from another perspective, and not just be told by like a news program or something. Really cool. 9 different professional groups were studied by Sakritar and Ransil in 1996 on the handedness distribution in approximately equal numbers of accountants, architects, dentists, lawyers, librarians, mathematicians, orthodontists, orthopedic surgeons, and psychiatrists. 300 people from each profession were asked. By male, their age, sex, and whether they considered themselves right or left-handed or ambidextrous. On the 2007 questionnaire mailed, 1,196, 44% were returned. The data regarding their verbal skills, visuospatial skills, Bimanual, finer motor skills and mathematical skills were submitted to various computations in which the available responses were always left, usually left, or no preference, usually right and always right. From the average laterality scores, it appears that orthopedic surgeons, librarians, and mathematicians are mostly right-handed, and that lawyers and architects are either the least right-handed or the most left-handed. The differences between mathematicians slash librarians and orthodontists, orthodontists, I'm silly, orthodontists and slash dentists were neither statistically nor clinically significant. Any influence of sets was considered inconclusive because of the 9-to-1 disproportion of male to female responders. Maybe you should ask gender instead of sets. But this was in the 90s, so I can't. Oh no, 2007 questionnaire. I hate what sets are you questions on stuff like that. In the paper Left-Handed Surgeons, Are They Left Out? Adsumali et al. Surveyed 98 surgeons in the New York City area, of whom only 5% were female. 31% were ambidextrous and 69% were left-handed. Among the left-handed, they found considerable difficulty using long vesicular needle holders, heavy hemostatic clamps, and right-handed scissors. 28% felt prone to needle sticks and other hazards. Operations such as closkiectomy, right hemicolectomy, pelvic operations, and other procedures around the around the esophagus, gastroesophageal junction were difficult to learn when standing on the right side of the operating table. Ooh, they go into a lot of stuff here. Okay, let's just see the conclusion. For those who have all 10 digits and are left-handed, be happy. You are in good company. So many famous people did well despite their sinister handicap. Even 25% of the Apollo astronauts were left-handed. If you have lost bits of your digits, whole digits, or even a hand, you can still do well in the 20th century. If the amputated portions are not available, take heart. You can still be a surgeon. A classic paper by hand surgeon Paul W. Brown titled Less Than 10 Surgeons with Amputated Fingers surveyed 183 surgeons who had lost parts of their hands. 29 surgeons had lost significant parts of their thumb, and 28 had multiple digits lost. If half sustained their loss after becoming surgeons, most of the loss were caused by mechanical trauma. One had his finger bitten off by an orangutan. Wow, that's an interesting story. And another while shark fishing. One of two with congenital defects were a pediatric orthopedist with significant loss of 8 digits. Of those who lost fingers after completing their surgical training, only 3 quit operating. Several surgeons claimed that their digital loss stimulated them to become ambidextrous, thus improving their surgical skills. It's very interesting that the conclusion is focusing on surgeons, even though, like, there were so many other parts of the left-handedness thing talked about here. And if this is the conclusion, then I feel kind of, well, not disgusted, really disappointed. I feel really disappointed with this whole thing now, because this is basically saying, oh, keep a chip up your lip? A stiff upper lip. Just keep a stiff upper lip. It could be worse. Which is like, not what you tell someone who has a lot of problems in society from like societal and structural forces. Like, it's like, well, you can be a doctor if you want still. And it's like, that might not even be the thing. Like, doing this sort of research to see like what kind of jobs we're allowed to do was not the point. And like talking about how far we've come, like the Wikipedia article kind of did, like only does so much. or I should say, the Wikipedia article wasn't biased in that direction, but the people that it was quoting, the people who talked about this, who have major names in this area of study, um, who were quoted, seem to believe that like left-handed discrimination is basically over, and unfortunately, it's not, and it will never be until and unless greater societal changes that affect more than just left-handedness are implemented. Um, because just like with so many other things and so many other allowances that society doesn't give you, if there was a lot more versatility in the things you were allowed to do, if there was a lot more empathy for people who struggle with things that are not necessarily normal to struggle with, and if there were safety nets in place that took people's differences into account, and if healthcare was actually considered a human right, amongst other things, then there are many issues that left-handed folks face that wouldn't be as severe. And the reason that I'm constantly linking this to what people would consider bigger issues to like societal injustice, uh, putting left-handedness into the fight against ableism will not hurt um, disability like social justice work. I don't think so, at least. Like not being forced to write with a certain hand is great, but like even if you live in a family that is very positive to your left-handedness, there's still a lot in society that's going to deter you from being left-handed actively. And even now, even though we've known that we were like originally left-handed, we haven't put any significant effort into trying to be truly ambidextrous because of like how much work that takes, how much disincentive how disincentivized we are towards that sort of stuff. For example, if we want to start drawing left-handed, we have to like put our tablet on the opposite side of the desk, but all our chords and stuff are on the right side of the desk. So it actually takes more effort to like situate it that way. And then we also have to get past the growing pains of like pushing past like the awkward phase of getting used to like doing a thing with a certain hand. Although in terms of like actually writing things down, using our tablet to do that might be useful because we don't have to deal with like ink smudges and stuff like that. I don't want to say anything like expect a video about this, but I strongly want to make even a short YouTube video about all this stuff. Gosh. I love my sinister hand.